Good morning or good afternoon. Today we are beginning officially our unit on the Great War, or also as it's called, World War I, which while World War II is a more popular subject, World War I actually was more of a watershed moment, a change in the direction that history was taking. And I hope that by this time you have gotten a lot out of watching All Quiet on the Western Front, because it's a good film, but it's also a classic book. You'll pardon me just for a second, and we're back. So let's begin going over our study guide today. And these study guides, this right here in your in Canvas for this particular day. I'll try and remember to put one in every day, and they're very handy. So, as it says, World War I will be a major milestone in history. You don't mind if I have a drink, do you? It will mark the beginning of the end of the European age and the end of the colonial age. You say, what does that mean? Well, historians say that from 1492, when Columbus did his thing, to 1914 was called the Age of Europe. And they say, what's the Age of Europe? Well, the Age of Europe was a period of time where Europe dominated the rest of the planet. World War I is going to change that. It will also cost some 30 million lives, and we'll see destruction on a scale that the world has not seen to this point, because what you have in World War I for the first time is the combination of the Industrial Revolution, in other words, mechanized killing where, most of the people who killed other people in World War I didn't see their faces because they were firing a cannon from miles away, or dropping bombs or whatever, or firing a machine gun. And so, for the first time in history, casualty numbers were in the millions for the first time. This was not the first total war. The first total war was probably the Boer War, but that's small in scale. But it did show what man was capable of in terms of his own destruction. Now, as we saw in the video, there are four main causes of World War I. Militarism. You say, what militarism? Short answer, militarism. Militarism is the idea that you can solve problems as a nation. You can solve problems as a nation by resorting to either the use of military force or the threat of military force. It's an attitude, and all the countries of Europe were full of that attitude, because one of the causes no one mentions about World War I was the simple fact that for 100 years Europe had not seen a major war. And so, when you don't experience war for a long time, a civilization tends to forget. I mean, all the people who fought in the wars, the last war had been long dead, and the only thing left over from the last war were like monuments and parks and medals and stories that got blown up, over exaggerated. Two, alliances. Europe found itself in a rather rigid system of alliances that basically divided Europe into two camps: the so-called Triple Alliance, which was Germany, Austria, and at first Italy, versus the Triple Entente, which was Great Britain, France, and Russia. And those two alliances, the members of which were bolstered by the fact that they were with their homies, were more bold. Imperialism. My short definition for imperialism is the tendency of one group, one people, one group, to force their will on another group. Now it's a nice broad Nice broad definition, and it can be anything from one country bullying another to one country actually taking over the other, as in the case of a colony. And all the European countries possessed colonies, and they argued about them. For nationalism, what is nationalism? Nationalism is probably the big cause. Nationalism is the belief that people of one country, yours, are inherently superior. The word inherently means they're born that way, are inherently superior to peoples of other countries. Well, and once again, that's a broad definition, because nationalism can be something as innocent as when, the World Cup begins or the Olympics begins, you want the team of your country to have success. Why? Well, because they're from your country. You believe that, they're superior. Or, in the case of World War I, the extreme nationalism we're going to be talking about is that the countries of Europe felt that they deserved resources even while denying those same resources to other countries. And so, yeah. All right. In Europe, military buildup, nationalistic feelings, and rival alliances set the stage for the coming war, for a continental war. Nationalistic feelings, rival alliances. Some historians say that World War I was simply a continuation of a rivalry that had begun centuries earlier. And now I'm really digging into history. A rivalry between two peoples, two branches of Charlemagne's Frankish Empire, the Germans, who lived on the eastern side of the Rhine River, who kept their native Germanic tongue, versus the French, who lived on the western side of the Rhine River and who had adopted Latin. Latin evolved into modern French. So, in the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon had literally brought the proud Prussians to Napoleon beat the Germans down like they stole something in the Battle of Jena and humiliated the German military, and the Prussians lived for a while under control of Napoleon, for which they never got over. The last meeting between France and Germany was the Franco-Prussian War that had been won in 6 months by the Prussians, who then forced the French to pay the cost of the war and to give up the Alsace-Lorraine region, which housed 3 very valuable resources. And you're saying, what are those resources? Coal, iron, and limestone. And you go, well, what do you make out of those 3 resources? Answer, steel. What do you make out of steel? Answer, during this period of time, I hate this. During this period of time, started to do that again, makes me so angry. During this period of time, you make everything out of steel. Yeah. I don't know how many of you are Steelers fans. I'm not, but I know that there are a number of Steeler fans around here. Have you ever wondered, when you look at the Steelers helmet, that logo on one side of the helmet? That is the logo of the International Steelworkers Union. And if you notice, it has 3 diamonds, and those diamonds stand for coal, iron, and limestone. So, now you can amaze your friends. Germany and France then spent endless amounts of time and energy trying to isolate each other from potential allies. Russia and Austria and the Ottoman Empire played an intriguing cat and mouse game down in the Balkan Peninsula. The Ottomans, called the sick man of Europe because they could not even protect themselves, much less their land holdings. Austria and Russia wanted to dominate the area that was kind of owned by the Ottoman Empire, whereas the Britons didn't want to see the Russians gain a foothold in the Balkans, and especially not the Bosporus Straits, as it would threaten their lifeline through the Suez Canal. Time. Let's take a time out, please. And we're back. And the reason I took that time out was because I wanted to show you this. This is a map of Europe in 1914. And notice how nice it is. The European countries are color-coded as to which side they are on in the war. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire versus France, Britain, and Russia. Triple Entente in the yellow versus the Central Powers in the pink. Blue countries are neutral, or at least they try to be. Okay. So, the Germans wanted to build a Berlin to Baghdad railroad. You say, what does that mean? I need another map. This is Berlin right here. Baghdad is way down here. And the Germans wanted to be able to build this railroad through here, which would have given them a leg up on British trade in the area. And so the British were like, no, we're not about that. Which would, as you see that would connect Germany with Far Eastern trade routes and would circumvent British naval supremacy. A group in the Austrian Empire called Serbs looked to Russia. And notice what it said. Serbs are Slavs, just as the Russians are Slavs, for help. So the Serbs looked to their big Slavic brothers, the Russians, for help, as the Russians wanted to perhaps unite all Slavic peoples under Russian control. Europe had fallen into a series of alliances which were supposed to make each nation in these alliances feel more secure, but actually made them act stupider, more foolhardy, bolder in their actions. Otto von Bismarck, the old prime minister, had used the military to unite Germany in the Franco-Prussian War, but after that, he had opted for a peaceful course of action. Bismarck negotiated the so-called Triple Alliance, which at first included Russia and Austria. And it looked like he had succeeded in isolating France. Unfortunately for Bismarck, the new king, and we saw him in the film, Kaiser Wilhelm II, fired Bismarck and tried to run the country on his own, and the first thing he did was to get rid of Russia as an ally. He hated Russians. But I mean, he wasn't being smart. Russia then joined Britain and France in the Triple Entente. And so, if we look at our map here again, what Kaiser Wilhelm I or II succeeded then in doing was to give Germany a major enemy on its two largest borders, France to the west, Russia to the east. He was cutting off his nose to spite his face. So once again, there were two main camps, the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, and Italy. Italy's going to drop out, spoiler alert, in 1916, and they're going to drop out and join the other side. And the Ottoman Empire, who got in to oppose Russia, the Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. This found Germany facing exactly what it did not want, and that was a strong enemy on each of its two longest borders. Japan soon joined the side of France, Britain, and Russia, but not because they really cared about the rivalry in Europe, but the Japanese wanted to expand their colonial empire. And Germany had several islands in the Pacific that would be easy pickings for the Japanese, which is exactly what they did. Once again, it was simply following the imperialistic example set by the West in acquiring colonial empire, set by the British, to be honest. So, to say that the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia was the cause of World War I would be like saying you stored 500 gallons of gasoline, 7 tons of gunpowder in your bedroom, and when one of your bozo friends walks in there smoking a cigarette, you blame your bozo friend for blowing up your house and leaving a crater 500 feet across and 100 feet deep. It's his fault. No. Fact is, like you stuffing your house with explosives, there are just too many overriding causes. The volatile situation in the Balkans was one such cause. In 1908, the Austrian Empire had annexed a large portion of Austria, Bosnia and Herzegovina. I hate that light. This is Bosnia and Herzegovina, right here. This area right there. Stupid light. Which were Slavic and wanted independence from Austria. These Serbs looked to their big Slavic brothers, the Russians, for relief and protection from the Austrians. The Austrians were trying to maintain their hold on that part of the empire. I mean, the Austrians were trying to keep their empire from breaking apart, and they sent the heir to the throne, the Archduke Ferdinand, and his wife Sophia, into that disputed territory on a goodwill mission, a mission that was supposed to engender good, positive feelings toward the Austrian Habsburgs. Worst thing in the world they could have done. What was Pan-Slavism? Pan-Slavism is the idea that there should be one Slavic country made up of all Slavic peoples. Now you're saying, what is it? You keep saying Slav, Mr. Gordon. And who are the Slavic peoples? Oh, there are a lot of them. The Slavs are the biggest ethnic group in Eastern Europe. The biggest Slavic the biggest Slavic group are the Russians, followed by the Poles. Then you get into your Czechs, your Slovaks, your Slovenes, your Serbs, Bulgaria, and various and sundry other peoples in Eastern Europe. Within Serbia, there was an organization that called itself the Black Hand. They had taken an oath that they were going to kill the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia when they came to visit it. There were 7 of them, 7 assassins, and they should have called themselves the Keystone Cops instead of the Black Hand, because they're a bunch of bumbling fools. They all missed. Every one of them missed. As you saw there in the little film, one of them threw a bomb. It missed. Another guy actually tried to shoot at the Archduke. Not only did he miss, but the crowd chased him, and he ran over a bridge over the main river, the Moljaka River. And of course, they had a oath, victory or death. And this bozo tries to jump off the bridge to kill himself, and he didn't go far enough out into the river. He ends up jumping into a marshy part of the river, and he has to be fished out by the people who are chasing him. But one kid, college student Gavrilo Princip, he was a typical college student. He showed up at his assigned point on the parade route, guess what? Late. And when he got there, the Archduke and his wife had already gone past. And so this bozo starts walking home, and guess what? The Archduke and his wife came back by an alternate route, turned into a street the wrong way, and then started to back out of the street. And guess who was standing on the corner? That's right, Gavrilo Princip. He then emptied his gun into the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia, and they were dead, and the rest, as we say, is history. Since the assassins were Serbs, the Austrian Empire wanted to not only punish them, but also to leave Austrian soldiers in Serbia. And see, that was the catch point. Yeah, Serbia, the small country Serbia, actually kind of was cooperating with Austria in the investigation until the Austrians said, oh yeah, and we're going to leave soldiers in your country to prevent further such activities. And Serbia said, we can't do that. Yeah, it was too much. The Serbs could not abide that part of the negotiations, appealed to the Russians for help. The Russian Tsar, who was already under siege himself because he was also a bumbling fool, one blunder to another, including the Russo-Japanese War, could not be seen as backing down the Austrians. The Austrians were in no mood to compromise and quickly asked the Germans if they would help. The Germans gave Austria what has been called the blank check statement. Now, I know nobody uses checks anymore, but the blank check statement was when, if you give someone a blank check that you sign your name to it and you just hand it to them, they can write any amount of money on that check they want. And that's often been called what the Germans gave Austria, the assurances that anything you want. So on July 28, 1914, Austria declared war on Serbia. And then it was like falling dominoes. Each of the allied nations began declaring war on each other. And I think that we're going to stop there. We're going to stop there. We'll begin Roman numeral 3 tomorrow. Okay? And I will see you.